In this final slice of configuring ePhones and ePhone DNs, I'm going to pick up right where we left off in the previous nugget at the base configuration of ePhones and ePhone DN configurations. Now, I should reemphasize that we have done the base configuration using the button command with a colon. So I can do 1:1, 1:2, that kind of thing to assign ePhone DNs to the ePhones. But now I want to talk about all the mystical variables that you can put in there. Let's begin again with the key slide we left off with in the last nugget. This shows the possible arguments for the button command, and as I just mentioned, we use the colon to assign a single button to the phone. Now, since the last nugget, I went ahead and wrote a little text file that added in a bunch of lines. You can see in the last nugget I created up to 3, and here I'm going to start off with 4, 5, 6, and so on. I'm just creating more lines so that we have more to play with. And then I went through and reassigned some of the phones. You can see I took away the assignments we did last time, and all I did was I went through phone by phone. I have 5 ePhones, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 set up, and I assigned, phone 1 button line 1, which is 1001. Phone 2 dphone DN2, which is 1002. So all I did was go through and assign each one of them their own unique phone number. So now when I pull up my voice router, let me get this sized right. When I pull up my voice router, I can see that I just did a show run section of ePhone, and I can see I've got all the ePhone DNs 1001 through 1010, and then all the ePhones with associated MAC addresses and their specific button assigned. So just a very basic assignment right now with each phone having its own phone line. It's kind of a PBX model. So now we can explore what some of these other buttons do. For example, you see call waiting beep, no ring. What the B does, the button argument B does, is allow the phone to be silent. Meaning, when somebody calls the phone, you won't hear it ring. You'll see it on the screen, display ringing symbols and stuff like that. So maybe it's a quiet environment. You don't want the phone to ring, but you do want to hear call waiting beeps. So if somebody's on the phone and they get a call, it'll hear a call waiting beep. If I wanted to do that, I'm not going to make that assignment on one of ours, but I could do, button. We'll say 2 colon, or see, I'm so into the colon world, 2B, and then the ePhone DN number will say 5 if I wanted to assign that as a beep. Now, here's the feature ring option. I can go in and assign a phone that rings differently, or a phone line that rings differently. Like as of right now, I have ePhone DNs 1 through 5 used up on my CME router. So let's say I want to make a second line assignment. I have, for instance, sitting right next to me, the 7970 phone. Line 1 on this is 1003. I'm going to make line 2 a feature ring, and I'm going to make it 1006. So whenever somebody dials the phone number 1006, it's going to ring this phone next to me with a feature ring. So to make this assignment, let me actually turn up the ring volume on this phone just so you can hear it and tell the difference between the feature ring. I'm going to go to that phone, which is currently 1003. Let me just do a show ePhone so I can see which one it is. I've got 1001, 1003. So it is ePhone 3, I guess 3. That makes sense. So I'm going to go into global config mode, get under ePhone 3. I'm going to say button 2 F6. Restart. So that now I've made that button assignment. The phone has to reboot to get the phone number assigned to it. Button 2 will now have extension 2006, and that will be a feature ring, so that I'm able to notice when that phone line is ringing. Now I'm waiting here because the 7970 phones always take longer to boot than the 7960s. Waiting. Seeing a beautiful Cisco logo on the screen. Meanwhile, I'm going to bring this guy up into the screen because I'm going to make a call from the IP communicator to that phone. And watching the phone right now, it's coming up. Registering. And registered. You can see it on the screen. It just registered down there. I see 1006 is the second line. So from this phone, I'm going to dial 1006. Can you hear that? Hang on, listen. Here, it's kind of like a chirp chirp. So that's what the feature ring sounds like, and that's how you can make. Hopefully that came through. That's how you can make different button assignments that do different things. And I'm not going to demonstrate each one of these. A lot of them we'll talk about in the upcoming slides. These overlay lines, but just to give you an idea of what they do, monitor mode and watch mode do the same thing virtually. Monitor mode and watch mode means that I can assign a line to a phone that can't be used. You can just use it to monitor status. For example, on this IP communicator, this is 1005, so I could go in here and let me exit out and go ephone 5, which is my IP communicator, and I'll say button 2 is going to be a monitor mode button, and I'm going to watch ephone DN6. So I'm going to actually watch the line that I just assigned to my 7970 phone right next to me. Now, thankfully, the IP communicator can boot a lot faster. Now, I'm clicking on this, and it speed dials the button. I was clicking on it to show you. Notice, I'm turning down the volume on this phone next to me. Notice that when I click on that, it goes to 1005 and auto dials 1006. I'll hang up. I can't actually use this as a phone line, but when the 7970 is in use, I just picked up the handset right next to me. Notice it shows me that it's active, it's in use. This one can't be called. So think about this here with me. I can see the phone status. I'm going to hang up, and you can see that it goes back to gray. I can see the phone line status, and I can speed dial it by clicking it, but I can't actually use it. Who do you think this monitor mode or watch mode, I'll explain that one in a second, who do you think that would be useful for? A receptionist. When you've got the receptionist, a lot of times organizations will have, the receptionist phone, we'll say it's a 7960. So we've got the 6 lines over here. That is his or her lines that they can make incoming and outgoing calls. They can receive calls on. But then they'll attach those expansion modules. Remember the 79, 14, 15, or 16 expansion modules, which add 14 lines to that phone. Now, those 14 lines, there's no receptionist that can actually handle, what would this be, 28 plus 6 lines over here, handle the 30-some lines that this would provide, 34 lines. Sorry, I had to do that math. You can't handle 34 active calls. What this is used for is where you can add a mini employee numbers as monitor mode, if you will, to the receptionist phone. So the receptionist, they get an incoming call for John, whose extension 1006. The receptionist simply glances over at John's line, and they can tell, hey, sorry, John's on the phone right now. Do you want me to take a message or forward you to the voicemail, or would you like to wait on hold? And they can get a quick pulse of all the lines that are going on in the company. Now, with that in mind, what's the difference between monitor mode and watch mode? Well, in monitor mode, if you've got monitor mode happening, you are watching an individual line. So if I assign, extension 1006, just like you saw in my IP communicator right here, as soon as that goes off hook, I see that line is busy, and it shows busy on my IP communicator. It goes on hook and it goes idle again. The watch mode does the same thing, but instead of watching the individual line, watch mode watches the whole phone. So, for example, if I'm watching right now 1006, which is the second line on the 7970, if the user, which primary extension is 1005, started using that, monitor mode wouldn't show me that. It would only show me 1006 is busy if 1006 was busy. If 1005 was busy, it wouldn't show busy. That makes sense? So watch mode watches the whole phone. So if I say I want to watch ephone DN 1006, well, the CME will know that, 1006 is associated to the same phone that 1005 is. So if either of those go off hook, the phone would show up here as busy. It would show a red line. So that's good news. So if John has 2 extensions and John is on one of them, the receptionist won't mistakenly forward a second call to John's phone if John can't handle 2 of them at a time. So those are the difference between those. Those are honestly rarely used. They're used for receptionists, but that's about the only use you'll have for them. Silent ring is obvious. If you use an S, it's going to not ring when the phone gets a call. It'll just show it on the display. It's good for environments where you don't want ring noises people won't have the ability to turn on their ringer and that kind of thing. Now we come to overlay lines. You see 3 different variables that give you an overlay line. This warrants some discussion. Overlay lines focus around the concept of shared lines. So, for example, if I wanted to have 2 users that have the same line, that's considered a shared line. That's useful, especially if you've got a key system style environment where all the phones, this goes to a switch and all our phones are plugging in, and maybe all the phones in your environment have the same 3 lines, 1001, 1002, 1003. That's the same on all of the different phones over here. Now, in that kind of environment, shared lines are good. And the basic shared line is really easy to set up. If you notice, all I did was create ephone DN10, which is going to be our shared line. We gave it the number 1010, and this is a dual line configuration. And remember, dual line allows things like call waiting, call transfer, allow you to put somebody on hold and talk to another person on the phone, all those kinds of features. And all I've done is assign that same line to 2 phones. So ephone 8 and 9 have ephone DN10 assigned to line 1 of their phone. That's it. That's a shared line. Now, the trouble with this configuration, and this may not be trouble, it all depends on your goal for this environment, but some trouble that you could have with this is this allows 1 call per ephone DN and 1 active user. So that means if you've got a user that is using this, maybe the user of ephone 8 picks up line 1, immediately the line goes red. That little button will go red on the ephone 9, and they will not be able to use that line because it's in use. They're both sharing the same ephone DN. Now, let's talk about the good and the bad. The good for that kind of situation is in an environment like this, where you really have only, we'll say, 3 phone lines coming into this router from the PSTN. So when somebody is using 1001, it literally links up to one of your 3 phone lines that go onto the PSTN, and you don't want multiple people to be able to use that because they can't. There's only 1 phone line there. So in that kind of environment, this is priceless. It works well. People know line 1 is busy. I got to use line 2 or line 3. Likewise, for incoming calls, they'll come to those specific numbers. But there's also environments where this may not be desired. For example, maybe you have a tech support group of 3 phones, 3 employees that provide help desk support for your organization. You want all of them to have the phone number 1010 because that's the general number in the company. When a user needs help, they dial 1010, and you want all 3 of these phones to ring and receive that call. Now, this configuration right here would accomplish the first thing I said. When somebody needed help and they dialed 1010, all 3 of those phones would ring. Great. But the person who answers that phone, let's say it's this user right here, this help desk employee, they answer the call. Immediately, these 2 guys see the line is busy, meaning they're not going to get a call. So someone else, while that person is on the help desk helping them, somebody else dials 1010. What happens? Well, what happens, and this is kind of funny, since this is dual line, the person who is actually on a tech support call right now hears a call waiting beep. It's going to go beep in their ear, letting them know that they can take a second help desk call if they want to. But these 2 guys are over here eating popcorn. They're not doing anything. They're just looking at this one overworked guy as like, oh, you're the unlucky chap who answered the call. You're stuck. We're just going to hang out. Not desirable. Now, before I get into this, I'd like to call your attention to my near flawless use of the word chap in the last slide. That was for all the people in Great Britain who are listening to me. For some reason, I have this strange habit of adopting cool words from different variations of the English language. Like many years ago, I had a roommate who was from Canada, and he always said "eh" after everything. We talk, and it always he'd say "eh," and I it's kind of like right then kind of sort of language, and for some reason I just thought that was the greatest thing, so I adopted that into my own English language. So now when I go around and I say to things, people are like, oh, you're from Canada, and I go, no, I just say that, and now I'm adopting chap. So I'm truly going to confuse people when I talk to them as to where I'm from. So Why I see these things just come to my head. I don't know why. So here we are. This may help the situation a little bit. Let's modify our configuration, our original shared line setup. We now created two ePhone DNs, right? We've got ePhone DN 10 and 11, and we assign them the same phone number, 1010. The CME router will allow you to do this. It'll take that just fine. And then I go to ePhone 8, which I'll represent with this little phone right here, and I assign it ePhone DN 10, linking it right here to this guy. So he's got the first one, and I go under ePhone DN 9, represented by this, and assign him ePhone DN 11. So we almost have two instances of the 1010 phone number that are assigned to these devices. Now, this may or may not achieve your result. When you've got a user out here that dials 1010, the help desk number, CME sees a direct conflict, meaning there is no specific match for that. It has multiples between them. And when we get into its distribution algorithms later, when we talk about the dial peer configuration, we'll see its way that it distributes conflicts like this. If it is an exact match and it's duplicated, CME will randomly distribute these calls. Now, it's not random as in round robin, like you'll get the first, you'll get the second. It is truly kind of a random algorithm in the router that's a flip of the coin. So this guy may get the first call to 1010, and by the way, only his phone rings. Both phones don't ring. So it says, okay, randomly I choose you for the first one. Second call to 1010, it flips the coin and says, okay, you get the second one. Sorry, you know, we got the heads twice. So, you know, you get the second call to 1010. Oh, third one to come in, we'll hit this guy. So he may be on a call and just, you know, the coin flips and he randomly gets a second call, so his call waiting will beep. So again, we're not really round-robin distributing. We're just doing random. Now, this may be your desired result. Maybe you want this for your tech support group. It'd be exciting for the employees, no doubt. You know, they'd kind of look at each other like, okay, who's going to get it? Oh, bummer. You got it again. You know, so it kind of flips back and forth with that. And we can get some control over this randomized algorithm using what's known as the preference and hunt stop commands. If the random algorithm was a little too random or strange for me, I could go underneath each one of those ePhone DNs, 10 and 11, and assign them preferences. The router will allow you to choose preferences from 0 through 9, so up to 10 different preferences that you can set. By setting preference 0 right here on the first ePhone DN 10, this is the most preferred. Okay, I know it doesn't make sense. Lower preferences are actually better in this case. So, you know, Cisco is consistently inconsistent with higher numbers or lower numbers that are better. You just have to remember, the lower your preference number, the better you are in this case. So if I have, you know, the phone, I think it was ePhone 9 that's assigned this one, by assigning it preference 0, he always gets the first call. The only time the second phone gets a call is if this phone is busy. Now keep in mind, this is a dual line configuration, so think of the busyness. We would have to receive one call right here, be busy, and then get a second call on call waiting. So we, you know, be talking to one person and say, oh, hold on, I got another call. Hit the hold button and start talking to the second person. And if a third call came in at that point, the router would detect us as busy and roll over to this guy. So if you do decide to do it this way, I would suggest removing dual line from this configuration, because that way, or use one of the other button overlays, and I'll talk about that in a moment. But with removing the dual line, at least you'll be on one active call and it will roll over rather than getting that call waiting beep for the second active call. Now this, again, might be your deciding factor if maybe this guy is a dedicated help desk employee. So he is your help desk, and this guy isn't really help desk. He just bails this guy out if things get really busy. Meaning, you know, you get more than one active call at a time, you might want it to roll over to this guy who maybe is the network admin, and oh, by the way, he can do help desk too if things are busy. Now, if you don't want to remove this dual line configuration, that's where this hunt stop comes in. Because remember, by removing dual line, yeah, it will roll over when the first one is busy, if you're on an active call, as in call waiting doesn't happen, but you actually remove other features, like this guy can no longer transfer the call. He can no longer start a conference call. I mean, there's other cool features that dual line give you that you'd be sacrificing by removing it. So the hunt stop command, there's my little hunting dog down here. The hunt stop tells the router, the CME router, when to stop hunting or trying that dual line number or the ePhone DN. Notice this. I've got number 1010. And by the way, hang on, before I talk about hunt stop, I'm just going to put a little note. Default preference. Remind me to tell you something later. On this hunt stop channel, you can see that we've got ePhone DN, number 1010, preference 0, meaning this is the most preferred one. The first call to ePhone DN, or the phone number 1010, will hit this guy. But notice I put hunt stop channel. What this means is when the first channel is busy. Now let's talk about channels. Dual line gives you two channels, 0 and 1. Okay. Hunt stop channel says as soon as the first channel is busy, stop hunting this guy. Don't hit him with another call. Instead, go to the next phone or the next number that's on 1010. Now you notice this looks a little strange in this configuration, because I have hunt stop channel and then I follow that with no hunt stop. It seems like contradictory statements there, but they're not. They complement each other. Hunt stop channel says as soon as the first channel of this guy is busy, roll over to the second line, stop hunting. But no hunt stop says, but don't stop hunting completely. Meaning if I just put hunt stop channel and I did not follow that with hunt stop, as soon as the first channel with this guy was busy, as soon as somebody was actively on the phone with extension 1010, hunt stop channel would say, stop hunting, we're done. Meaning, as soon as he's taking a call, the next call to 1010 would get a busy signal or would forward directly to voicemail, which is not my desired result. I want it, when this guy's got his first channel busy, to roll over to this guy. And notice that this guy has hunt stop channel, but does not follow that up with no hunt stop. Meaning, when this channel is busy, as soon as channel 1 on his phone is busy, or the first channel, it's going to say, I'm done hunting. I'm going to voicemail, or I'm going to return a busy signal to the person dialing 1010. However, I have that configured. So, let's talk about some variations. What if, let me cross this out, if this command wasn't in here, and I just put hunt stop. What if I just put this configuration in here? I did number 1010, preference 0, hunt stop. What would the result be? Well, in that case, the person who dialed 1010 would ring this phone number first. Person would be talking on the active call, and somebody else in the organization dials 1010. He would go to call waiting beep. Because we didn't stop the hunting on the first channel. We just said stop hunting on this number. Hunt stop without the channel variation says just stop hunting on this ePhone DN. So he would receive one call and one call waiting beep. Now, if while he was on the phone with the call waiting number, somebody dialed 1010, it would come in and see the hunt stop command and say, oh, you're busy. So this person would get a busy signal. It would never roll over to ePhone DN11. ePhone DN11 would just sit there and not be able to receive that call. So that would be how it would act if I did the hunt stop channel, or just hunt stop. Hunt stop channel just keeps it from rolling over to the second line. I know that can be a little weird. That's why I wanted to show you a couple variations of that. So my little note that I put over here to remind me, depref. What that means is default preference. By default, all of the ePhone DNs that you create have a default preference of 0. So in all honesty, this one right here, this command and this command are not necessary because the default is 0. As a matter of fact, if you type in preference 0 and then go back and do a show run, you won't see that command underneath the config because the router says, oh, that's the default. So only if you choose preference numbers other than 0 does it go beyond the default, like preference 1 through 9. So now we come to the idea of button overlay. A button overlay, in its simplest definition, allows you to associate multiple ePhone DNs with a single line instance. So, before I talk about the different separators that we can use and that kind of thing, look at this configuration. We've got ePhone DN10. Notice, not a dual line configuration, right? So it's a single channel. We do number 1010, preference 0, so this will be the first one to receive the incoming call, and no hunt stop. So when this guy gets hit and he's busy, it's not going to stop hunting here. It's going to move on to preference 1. So notice ePhone DN11, again, not a dual line setup. Number 1010, preference 1, so this will be the second one to receive the call. Now we go to the ePhones. Let me draw them up here. We've got ePhone 8, which button 1 is an overlay. Notice, O separator is an overlay line with no call waiting. I'll explain that in a second. So we're overlaying ePhone DN10 and ePhone DN11. So I'm putting two ePhone DNs associated with the same line. So on the user's screen, they see the number 1010 showing up here. On ePhone 9, I do the same thing. Button 1 overlay ePhone DN10 and ePhone DN11. Then I restart both of the phones. So what's the result? Well, the result is a phone call to 1010 makes both of these phones ring, right? Because they are both associated, button 1 on both of these phones is associated with both ePhone DN10 and 11. So this one, ePhone DN10, is the first one to receive the call. Hunt stop 0, so it gets the call. Both phones are associated with that ePhone DN, so both of them ring. So let's say this guy, this happy user right here, takes the phone call. So he's supporting the first call that came in to 1010, which went to both phones. The second call that comes into 1010 will now see that this line is busy because it's not a dual line configuration. It flips down to ePhone DN11, preference 1, and this guy hears the phone ring. He does not get a call waiting beep because the O separator is an overlay line with no call waiting. So the very first call comes into both of them. He answers it. He's on the phone. Second call, only this guy rings. He does not hear a call waiting beep in his ear. So that's a lot of times the ideal setup for a help desk group. So we've got all of these overlay lines right here. Now let's talk about the C separator. The C separator is an overlay line with call waiting. So this allows you when, let's say it's the exact same configuration. Hang on, let me remove my scribbling here. Gone. Exact same configuration, except we go in here and scribble out this O and say this is a C instead. C. So same configuration, substituting the C separator for both of these. Well, in this setup, both phones would still have the number 1010. First call, let's say, is answered by this guy. Both of them ring. First call comes to here. Second call to 1010, both of them will ring. You know, if this guy's on the phone, he'll hear a call waiting beep, even though he doesn't have a dual line configuration. Now, that may seem really weird because it's like, well, wait a sec. You can't have a call waiting beep on ePhone DN10 because it's not a dual line. Well, the truth is, the phone is not giving him a call waiting beep on ePhone DN10. It's giving him a call waiting beep on 11. Think of this situation here, right? He's on the phone with a phone call. Phone call comes into 1010 again. It realizes ePhone DN10 is busy because it's not dual line. It fails over to ePhone DN11, which is preference 1, but both ePhone DN10 and 11 are associated with button 1 on this phone. So he's hearing a call waiting beep, but it's not from ePhone DN10. It's actually from ePhone DN11. So here's the dilemma. Let's say this guy is really a go-getter. He picks up the call. He's on one call. He gets the call waiting beep and answers the second call. This guy will see his line on ePhone DN1 go red. It's now busy because he cannot receive any more calls because both of these have been used up. This go-getter tech support guy on line 1 has taken both calls. The third call to ePhone DN, or I should say the phone number 1010, will receive a busy signal, and this guy cannot place any calls on his ePhone DN because all the channels on both ePhone DN 10 and ePhone DN 11 are used up. Now, my recommendation is that if you are using button overlay, you use them with only, hang on, I've really goofed things up now. There we go. You only use the non-dual line configuration. Combining dual line configurations with like the O and the C separator really get confusing because you might think, oh, well, I want overlay lines with no call waiting, but I'll make this a dual line configuration and use the O. Well, call waiting will still work because of the nature of dual line. Not because of the O command. So you'll actually receive 2 active calls on ePhone DN, even though ePhone DN 10, even though you're using the O, which means no call waiting. It gets really baffling, really confusing. So my recommendation is to use the non-ePhone DN dual line configuration with button overlay. So coming back to now our mystical button arguments. We have seen all of these different arguments. We've got the overlay line with call waiting, the no call waiting, and then the overlay line with call waiting. And then you have this X, this button, we'll say 1X, and then you can start putting buttons in there, which says overlay expansion / rollover. What this will allow you to do is, let's say you've got ePhone DN 10, which is phone number 1010. Just like we had before, and you want that to be your overlay, but then you've got the normal user's phone number. Like, let's say his normal line is 1003, or maybe you wanted other phone numbers, like ePhone DN 20 is actually 1020. Well, the button overlays only work if it's the same phone number, like if we had multiple ePhone DNs that are all 1010. If we had button 1X, and we did 1010, 1020, and all these different ePhone DNs here, it does what's known as overlay expansion or rollover. So phone calls to 1010 can actually roll over to 1020, and phone calls to 1020 can actually roll over to 1010 because they're all associated with the same button. Can't really think of many uses for that. Maybe if you want, one phone where the call rolls from line to line to line if they have multiple line numbers on there. But most of the time, you're going to be using the overlay line O or C arguments. All right, one more thing to talk about, and then we'll wrap up. I appreciate you hanging with me because there is a lot to the ePhones and ePhones DNs. As you can imagine, it's the core of your CME configuration. Last thing to talk about is the auto registration and assignment features of CME. Auto registration on CME is on by default, and this is the feature that allows an ePhone that does not have an ePhone entry in the running configuration of CME to come and try and register. As a matter of fact, let me show this to you, and I think we saw this early on in the video. I've got this, which is currently ePhone 5 right now, right? I can go into my CME router into global config mode, and I'll do no ePhone 5. Okay, and you can see immediately it recognizes you've been killed. My phone tries to reboot, and it comes up, it says I'm registering, and registers. Notice no line buttons. I've blown away its configuration. It's not in the CME running config. If I go do show run, I'll show the sections that have ePhone in it, which show all my ePhone DNs, and then down here, notice ePhone DN 1 or ePhone 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 is gone, and yet this guy shows Cisco Unified CME. If I go back and do a show ePhone, I see all my ePhones and MAC addresses. It shows their phone numbers that they've registered with. This guy's got a bunch of phone numbers and feature ring on that phone number and all that. But notice ePhone DN5, which I killed, is still showing as registered. I deleted its configuration, but it's still there. That's the auto registration feature of CME that just allows these guys to come register. It can be handy because I can allow phones that I have no configuration for to register, and then I can go in here and grab their MAC address and create an ePhone for them and assign them phone numbers and things like that. But sometimes you may not want that feature. I may not want it to come up and give me this handy screen and show me date and time, show me the registration information. So I can go into telephony service configuration mode and do a no auto. You can see the command is no auto reg ephone. Hit enter. Now, I'll just do a restart all here. Now when it goes through and starts restarting all my phones, it's going to restart this guy last. I probably should have just rebooted this guy manually on the computer, but it's going through rebooting all my phones as of right now, which are all re-registering. There we go. It went ahead and you can see it restarted the Cisco IP communicator phone, which was this guy, and now it's coming up and saying registration rejected. No configuration for da-da-da. It has some message there that would be in the log. But now when I go back and do a show ePhone, trying to ignore all these re-registration messages coming through, you can see ePhone 5 is unregistered. It's gone, meaning it's not allowed anymore. Stop restarting phones. It's almost done going through all the phone models that it's trying to re-register. But there's now a command I want to show you, which is show ePhone. There we go. We've got all the phones re-registered now. Show ePhone, and if I scroll down, there's an option for attempted registration. See that up here? And I hit enter, and you can see that right here it's saying, hey, this guy's attempting to register, but it's not happening because I have auto registration turned off and I'm rejecting him. So sometimes I actually like turning off auto registration because when I'm doing a show ePhone, it's really hard to see which phone is one that I've configured, it shows register and all that, and one that I haven't configured. So by doing a show ePhone attempted registrations, I immediately see the ePhones and their MAC address that have no configuration in a nice little columnized summary style format. So I can just look and say, aha, that's all of them. So when I go through, if I wanted to do a new configuration of CME, I could just do this and see all the ePhones that I have no configuration for and then create them. This is where the second half of auto registration can come in. There's also a feature known as auto assignment. Auto assignment allows me to couple, and partner with the auto registration feature to auto assign phone numbers to the phones. So, for example, when I was under the telephony service config and I had that auto reg ePhone turned on, then these phones could come in there, once it reboots and do its thing, and it could get a blank configuration. But we can take it to the next level and go into auto assign. And you can see that the CME allows me to now auto assign phone numbers to auto registered phones that maybe are not assigned yet. For example, I did not assign ePhone DN6 to 10. And I'll hit enter. What it will do now is any new phone that's coming in, and this guy's still doing its reboot cycle. Just kind of wait for it to do its thing. As it comes up, it will automatically be assigned the phone number, starting with ePhone DN6. Now, while this guy is rebooting, and they take a while, I'm going to show you that you do have some arguments with this. If you want to, you can have the type of phone, and I can say I only want to assign ePhone DN6 to 10 to the Cisco IP communicator phones, or to the 7941 phones, or whichever phones I'd like to specifically identify to get these ePhone DNs. And that way I can say, 7940s get 6 through 10, 7960s get 11 through 15, all of those kinds of assignments if I want to break it apart like that. I can also automatically forward the phone to me. So that way when calls to the new auto registration phone comes in, I can receive those calls, or some other user can receive those calls by defining a call forwarding parameter for any auto assigned phone. This is just taking too long. I'm going to close that phone and reopen it. And I think I've done it too fast. My computer is now saying Cisco IP communicator has failed to respond. But anyway, you get the point. When you set up auto registration and auto assignment, it automatically assigns specific extensions to those phone values. Okay, I'm going to open Task Manager now and
and try and kill it. And I'm gonna let me pause the video so I can do this in the background, and then reboot the IP communicator and go from there. All right. Well, I guess anticlimactic there. I got the IP communicator rebooted, but I couldn't start the recording fast enough. It just flashes, reboots, and gets a ePhone DN auto-assigned. You can see in the configuration here, as you know, I already had this command typed in, shows the IP communicator coming in. It shows it was registered, then it instructed to reboot, so it shows a unregistration normal event, and then as it goes through its registration alarm, it sent a reset command now that it has the new phone number and registered again. So that this ePhone DN or ePhone 5 now has the ePhone DN7 assigned to it. I must have had I had 6 assigned up here. So it picks up with the last unassigned phone number and begins from there. Woohoo! We are done with ePhones and ePhones DNs. It took 3 nuggets to fully explain those concepts around that, but at this point, if you think about it, you now have the core of CME configuration. You can set up a local area network using CME and have phones calling each other, working, and all that kind of stuff. When we get into dial peers, that'll be our connectivity to the PSTN, so we can receive and send incoming and outgoing calls to the public switch telephone network. So just to hit the highlights, we went through from the beginning of these, ensured the foundation of how the phone boots and so on. We prepared CME for the IP phone registrations. Remember that using the max ePhones and max ePhone DNs and IP source address commands so that it can receive and process the phone registrations. We then talked about what the ePhones and ePhone DNs were, talking a little bit about the matrix, creating these virtual phones or these, what was the exact, I can't forget a matrix line, the digital representation of a physical phone. That's the matrix line for you there. And then the base configuration of ePhones and ePhones DNs, really going into the MAC address here, and then associating the ePhone DNs to the ePhones using the button commands, and really focused on all the variables with that. So I hope this has been informative for you, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.